the press comments on the esteem that the president, Adenauer stays right in step with the Kennedy pace.
They hardly put in a busier weekend than this one in New York. First,
but they get him away at last. Back to Berlin.
Una común determinación para preservarla y extender sus frutos a todos.
El carro del presidente y el gobernador, seguido por un carro de capota abierta en el cual irán miembros de la policía secreta de la seguridad del presidente. En el tercer carro, también de capota transparente, la señora Kennedy y la señora Muñoz. Está preparándose para salir la caravana desde el aeropuerto. Todavía no se ha movido el primer carro, que es el que lleva al presidente. Después de estos primeros carros irán los demás con los miembros de la comitiva presidencial, y los carros que ustedes habrán de ver por el camino y algunos de ustedes van a ver aquí en la televisión antes de terminar esta transmisión son de fotógrafos y camarógrafos tanto local como de Estados Unidos, que han llegado y están cubriendo todo este desfile, toda esta llegada del presidente Kennedy. Irán tomando vistas a todo lo largo de la avenida Valdoriotti hasta San Juan. Ahí va el auto del presidente y el gobernador saliendo de la pista de
North Carolina. Here, hard-hitting, battle-ready units armed with the latest weapons are prepared to go into combat at any level of the...
will enlarge as a result of it, and our friendship will get stronger.
Full military honors are paid to President Ayoub, World War II veteran of the Burma Front and the former commander of his country's armed forces. In Mr. Kennedy's new presidential limousine, the two presidents acknowledge the cheers of the throngs. The end of the parade finds the presidential party at the Blair House, the president's official guest house, where the distinguished...
Solid black steel, and the other was transparent plastic. And these different roofs were put together in separate sections, so you could put them on the car if you needed to protect the president from inclement weather.
was killed, the Secret Service agents normally walk directly beside the car on either side. We do not see any in this photograph, but usually 2 or 3 Secret Service agents will walk on either side of the car so that they are there to spot anyone who looks like a troublemaker. For firing the shot, it's most unusual, incidentally, that such a thing could happen because of the unusually tight security measures that are ordinarily taken by the Secret Service who guard the president. And normally, any vantage point, a rooftop, and windows which command a parade route are carefully scrutinized and carefully guarded, and men are usually posted on rooftops along a parade route, particularly if there is any reason at all to suppose that there might be someone in the area who would have such ideas as assassination in his mind regarding the president. These precautions, of course, are taken by the Secret Service for all presidents, as they have been for many years.
episode made me angry. It did make me angry. We're talking about the President of the United States. And I'm not a holier-than-thou guy.
And in the 1960s, I believe that we can demonstrate so that all the world will want to follow our example, that freedom and prosperity can move hand in hand. I express our thanks to you, and I can tell
In Mr. Kennedy's new presidential limousine, the two presidents acknowledge the cheers of the throngs. The end of the parade finds the presidential party at the Blair House, the president's official guest house, where the distinct...
Mr. Kennedy की नई limousine से दोनों
through the streets of Berlin began. The entire route was lined with people who had waited hours to see the president, the man dedicated to the defense of peace and freedom. Never before had the Berliners turned out in such large numbers. Never was a reception so rousing.
Und hier also ist einer der dramatischsten Punkte, wo Ost und West sich gegenüberstehen. Wenn Berlin ein Vorposten der freien Welt ist, dann ist der Checkpoint Charlie einer der vorgeschobensten Posten, der am weitesten vorgeschobenen Posten der Soldaten des Präsidenten.
Dort heimkehrende Helden der Nation gefeiert werden. Der Weg John F. Kennedys zum Schöneberger Rathaus wird zu einer einzigen Triumphfahrt. Kennedy hat auf eigenen Wunsch auf den Platz in der Mitte des Wagens verzichtet, um sich gelegentlich wegen seiner Rückenschmerzen seitlich am Wagenrand abstützen zu können. Von den Strapazen der letzten Tage ist ihm jetzt aber nichts anzumerken. General Lucius D. Clay, Initiator der Berliner Luftbrücke, die die Stadt während der 10-monatigen sowjetischen Blockade am Leben hielt und den die Berliner deshalb außerordentlich lieben, der mit dem Präsidenten nach Deutschland gekommen ist. Er sagt zu ihm, bevor dieser Tag zu Ende gegangen ist, werden Sie 90% der Berliner gesehen und kennengelernt haben. Pierre Salinger, Kennedys Pressechef, ein eher hartgesottener Mann, sagt später, dieser Empfang in Berlin ist der größte, der dem Präsidenten irgendwo in der Welt zuteil geworden ist. Am frühen Vormittag hat Kennedy den Gewerkschaftstag der IG Bausteine Erden in der Berliner Kongresshalle besucht. In einer kurzen Ansprache hat er dort betont, freie Gewerkschaften seien eine wichtige Voraussetzung für das Funktionieren der Demokratie. Freiheit aber sei nicht nur ein Ziel, sondern auch ein Mittel und ein Weg für ein besseres Leben aller Menschen auf dieser Erde. Freiheit und ihre Unteilbarkeit ist das Grundmotiv der Rede, die John F. Kennedy vor dem Schöneberger Rathaus halten wird. Sie ist mitbestimmt von den Eindrücken, die er an der Berliner Mauer erhalten hat und die ihn tief bewegt haben. Kennedy sagt, die Mauer sei die abscheulichste und stärkste Demonstration für das Versagen des kommunistischen Systems. Und was für Berlin gelte, das gelte auch für ganz Deutschland. Ein echter Friede in Europa könne nicht gewährleistet werden, solange jedem vierten Deutschen das Recht der freien Wahl vorenthalten würde. War die Ansprache in der Frankfurter Paulskirche die inhaltlich bedeutendste,
America, December 1961. This covers Puerto Rico trip. There you go. There's the bubble top, Agents by the Car.
Where the people make no secret of how warmly they feel about their guests. President Kennedy's destination now, the offices.
And the other was transparent plastic. And these different routes were put together
by laying wreaths at the tombs of two of Mexico's heroes, and then attending Mass at the holiest of that nation's shrines, the Basilica of Guadalupe. They are greeted by the Primate Archbishop of Mexico, Miguel Gomez, who later led a prayer in English for the full success to all efforts made during the President's visit. After Mass, the Kennedys head for the airport and then home to Washington. Last week, there was uncertainty in capital circles about the President's reception in Mexico. It turned out to be one of his greatest triumphs in personal diplomacy.
Friendship with personal warmth and with a personal welcome.
For the Army, Air Force, and our allies.
The police drive by quite frequently, helping the Marines keep the crowd in check. The Marines, by the way, are stationed at 54th and El Cajon, where we have one of the biggest crowds of the route, are stationed about every 5 or 6 feet apart, and they've certainly had their hands full in keeping these people back because everybody's leaning forward, pushing to the front, knowing that the President's about to go by. The police drive by quite frequently, helping the Marines keep the crowd in check. The Marines, by the way, are stationed at 54th and El Cajon, where we have one of the biggest crowds of the route, are stationed about every 5 or 6 feet apart.
The President just said thank you very much as we welcomed him personally to San Diego. He's going to see a large part of San Diego, a large part of the population of San Diego as he proceeds out El Cajon Boulevard to State College, an estimated 250,000 persons. Hi, Lionel. And the motorcade proceeds, followed by Secret Service agents.
Mobile camera in the parade route. The police drive by quite frequently, helping the Marines keep the crowd in check. The Marines, by the way, are stationed at 54th and El Cajon, where we have one of the biggest crowds of the route, are stationed about every 5 or 6 feet apart, and they've certainly had their hands full in keeping these people back because everybody's leaning forward, pushing to the front, knowing that the President's about to go by. The band in the background, Crawford High School Band, striking up, hoping that the President will be here any moment and wanting to play some stirring march music for him. May I again point out that the picture you see is not from 54th and El Cajon. It's from a vantage point about 4 blocks west of where we are, looking west and seeing the first of the motorcade as it goes by. And that's part of the crowd lining the streets, lots of children, the Marines with their hands full. The motorcycle officer, I understand, has been instructed to make sure that everybody does not get out into the street. No reports of whether or not he has run over any toes or not, but doing a good job of keeping them by. Now, the presidential motorcade is approaching 54th and El Cajon. Everybody here is on his feet. The people are beginning to cheer. The people behind me are, of course, quite expectant and quite excited about this occasion. First car coming by our camera at 54th and El Cajon is one of the lead cars on the motorcade. Behind it, the officers on their motorcycles with their red lights blazing. They can see them now, and a cheer is going up from 54 and El Cajon. They're yelling, they're waving. They've all got signs, it seems, and they're all waving their signs. The President looks fit. He's got a great big smile. He's waving to all of the people along, waving to our camera right now, getting a tremendous ovation from the crowd. He looks fine. He's got a big smile on his face. Governor Brown in the car with him, along with Lionel Van Deerlin, Senator Claire Engel. In the second car, Glenn Anderson, Attorney General Stanley Mosk, Assemblyman Jim Mills, various White House guests. Jim Mills, various White House guests. The presidential motorcade driving right down the center of the street in our picture. He has not yet arrived at 52nd and El Cajon, where our first stationary camera is located. We hope to have a much steadier picture from the stationary camera, naturally, because it'll be mounted square right on the sidewalk. That's a shot of the helicopter flying over. This, if I'm not incorrect, is one of the helicopters that's relaying our TV signal from the mobile camera in the parade route. The police drive by quite frequently, helping the Marines keep the crowd in check. The Marines, by the way, are stationed at 54th and El Cajon, where we have one of the biggest crowds of the route, are stationed about every 5 or 6 feet apart, and they've certainly had their hands full in keeping these people back because everybody's leaning forward, pushing to the front, knowing that the President's about to go by. The band in the background, Crawford High School Band, striking up, hoping that the President will be here any moment and wanting to play some stirring march music for him. May I again point out that the picture you see is not from 54th and El Cajon. It's from a vantage point about 4 blocks west of where we are, looking west and seeing the first of the motorcade as it goes by. And that's part of the crowd lining the streets, lots of children, the Marines with their hands full. The motorcycle officer, I understand, has been instructed to make sure that everybody does not get out into the street. No reports of whether or not he has run over any toes or not, but doing a good job of keeping them by. Now, the presidential motorcade is approaching 54th and El Cajon. Everybody here is on his feet. The people are beginning to cheer. The people behind me are, of course, quite expectant and quite excited about this occasion. First car coming by our camera at 54th and El Cajon is one of the lead cars on the motorcade. Behind it, the officers on their motorcycles with their red lights blazing. They can see them now, and a cheer is going up from 54 in El Cajon. They're yelling, they're waving. They've all got signs, it seems, and they're all waving their signs. The president looks fit. He's got a great big smile. He's waving to all of the people along, waving to our camera right now, getting a tremendous ovation from the crowd. He looks fine. He's got a big smile on his face. Governor Brown in the car with him, along with Lionel Van Deerlin, Senator Claire Engel. In the second car, Glenn Anderson, Attorney General Stanley Musk, Assemblyman Jim Mills, various White House guests.
He will be brought directly past helicopter number 1, which is...
For it. May I again point out that the picture you see is not from 54th and El Cajon. It's from a vantage point about 4 blocks west of where we are, looking west and seeing the first of the motorcade as it goes by in the parade route. The police drive by quite frequently, helping the Marines keep the crowd in check. The Marines, by the way, are stationed at 54th and El Cajon, where we have one of the biggest crowds of the route, are stationed about every 5 or 6 feet apart, and they've certainly had their hands full.
For firing the shot. It's most unusual, incidentally, that such a thing could happen because of the unusually tight security measures that are ordinarily taken by the Secret Service who guard the president. And normally, any vantage point, a rooftop, and windows which command a parade route are carefully scrutinized and carefully guarded, and men are usually posted on rooftops along a parade route, particularly if there is any reason at all to suppose that there might be someone in the area who would have such ideas as assassination in his mind regarding the president. These precautions, of course, are taken by the Secret Service for all presidents, as they have been for many years. For firing the shot. It's most unusual, incidentally, that such a thing could happen because of the unusually tight security measures that are ordinarily taken by the Secret Service who guard the president. And normally, any vantage point, a rooftop, and windows which command a parade route are carefully scrutinized and carefully guarded, and men are usually posted on rooftops along a parade route, particularly if there is any reason at all to suppose that there might be someone in the area who would have such ideas as assassination in his mind regarding the president. These precautions, of course, are taken by the Secret Service for all presidents, as they have been for many years.
This is an aerial view of the motorcade route, showing the motorcade as we slowly moved along through the streets of San Antonio. Here we
As you can see, I am thanked at the end of this program.
As far as being someplace that it might have a sniper, you had to make sure all the windows were closed and have somebody to guard that building. We didn't have that kind of people, so we had to go like to the Fort Worth Police Department. I'll never forget, I worked with Chief Hightower.
Hightower, yeah.
Oh, what a great guy he was. But anyhow, I went to him and I said, Chief, I got a problem and you're going to have to help me. And I told him what it was. He said, yeah, we've got a problem. And so anyway, but Chief Hightower helped me, and he gave me a couple of guys to work with me while we were doing the advance there in Fort Worth. We had 3 agents assigned here. Bill Duncan, who was out of Colorado, was assigned to the White House temporary at the time, and so they sent him down. He was an excellent advance man for anybody. And so he came down, and he brought a man with him, Ned Hall, and myself, and we were the Fort Worth team. And so here we hit this. Well, the first thing, Bill Duncan knew that I had been in law enforcement here and that I worked this area. He said, you're in charge of the law enforcement liaison. Everything that has to do with law enforcement and protecting them as far as law enforcement is concerned, you're in charge of it. You use what people you need to. You go to each and every police department, and I did. I went to every police department in Tarrant County, every one of them. And I'm talking about Lake Worth, Benbrook, Saginaw, all of them around, North Richland Hills, Hearst, Manfield. I had every police department in the county online, ready to go. I even used the sheriff's department, which was Lon Evans, the sheriff then, and I even used their sheriff's posse, which was a mounted group at the time. And I know one of the pictures that we have when President Kennedy came out into the parking lot and made a speech on the morning of the 22nd. There, you see this guy on horseback back there. Well, we had those guys. I had them lined all the way to Carsville Air Base. I had one of those guys on horseback somewhere at an overpass or an underpass, one way or the other. So we used everything that we could get. You're not going to believe this, but we even used the Boy Scouts. We used Boy Scout troops at that time. After we got them loaded, I was the last person to get in a car. And I had the car was rolling, and I had the back door open, and I jumped in the lead car. And so we went on out to Carsville. But on the way out there, as I told you, I had these people on horseback, these deputy sheriffs out there along the road, and they were standing underneath the overpass and on top of the overpass in order to see that there's nobody could get around there that could get under it or over it or whatever.
They get him away at last. Back to Berlin.
This was a real political trip. It was maximum exposure. Open cars. President had instructed us not to be up on the back of the car. He wanted it not to appear there was anything between he and the people. He wanted the people to have the belief that he was just one of them. And so that's the way we went in the motorcade from Love Field into downtown Dallas.
Well, he can tell you what he wants done, and he can tell you certain things, but that doesn't mean you have to do it. And what we used to do was always agree with the president, then we do what we felt was best anyway. Well, he can tell you what he wants done, and he can tell you certain things, but that doesn't mean you have to do it. And what we used to do was always agree with the president, then we do what we felt was best anyway.
I spoke to the special agent in charge of the White House detail, the #1 agent, Gerald Bain. I asked him, President Kennedy, I understand he was difficult to protect, right? He didn't want the agents on the back of the car, and he told me, this is an exact quote, I don't remember Kennedy ever saying anything about not having agents on the back of the car. If you look at the newsreels, you'll see agents on there. Well, one by one, I spoke to many of his colleagues, not only in the Secret Service, but actually White House aides that were not Secret Service agents, and it was a landslide. They were all telling me the same thing.
Ordered the men off the back of the limousine. Well, that's not true. I didn't think that was either. Yeah, Rufus Youngblood, that was one of the things he told me. He says that don't believe Manchester or Bishop. It's very disheartening for being a young researcher looking at books and trying to sift out what's fact and what's not. And the years, this is all becoming history now, and it's very discouraging to find certain things that are printed aren't true. Right. And you gentlemen were there, and you would know best. And when you were saying that, I believe you 10 times more than I would, William Manchester. Yeah. Oh, well, you were there. That's the problem. But the most alarming thing about this is, sir, is he quotes you in the book, but you're not interviewed in the book in the back section. Oh yeah. He says that supposedly President Kennedy told you, I'm quoting, keep those Ivy League charlatans off the back of the car. That doesn't sound like. Okay. Boy, I tell you, this is amazing. I didn't think so either. He was gracious enough to indicate all his interviews at the back section of the book, but your name wasn't there. Something. How did he get a direct quote from a gentleman he never spoke to? I never told him that. Yeah. Hey, repeated where President Kennedy told the agents, I guess yourself and other people, get these men off my limousine, don't do this. That's not true. Okay. That's true. Very nice man. Yeah, it's never interfered with us at all. Don't do this. That's not true. Okay. That's true. Very nice man. Yeah, it's never interfered with us at all. I find it interestingly enough, there's no truth to this thing about supposedly Kennedy ordered the agents off the back of the limousine. No, he had nothing to do with that. I figured that, because you know what? William Manchester makes the claim that Floyd Boring was ordered by Kennedy, and I'm quoting what it says in the book, says, keep those Ivy League charlatans off the back of my car. That is false. Yes, I found that out, and I talked to William Manchester, who lives in Connecticut, about that. He got real defensive with me. He said, all those notes are under seal, and I'm not allowing anyone, especially yourself, to look at these rules. Who was this you were talking to? William Manchester. Oh, okay, I talked to William Manchester. He called me on the book. Yeah, that book is just filled with things. That is, for the record of history, that is false. What confirmation has never been, in my history, any more rapport with presidents of the United States other than possibly Harry S. Truman. Yeah, that's another one they said. They feel just like John F. Kennedy. Yeah, they said the only thing caused I don't really fake, man. No, that's bad. I don't believe me. I'm not putting any stock into it. Just any death read. What the hell am I talking? I'm finding that out. I tell you what, Sam, it's getting to that point. What this is true? Yeah, and I tell you what, I get people that argue with me about this. Oh, come on, Kennedy was one of the most tough to protect presidents. He always ordered the men off the back of the limo, and now I'm finding out that's not true. You know, they say they make a big play about supposedly Ford. Kennedy was one of the easiest ones to ever protect, and this is why most, I would say 99% of the agents, and I even like to go 100, but I like to leave leeway like this. You like me, leave room for the pirate to go. Right. This is one of the best presidents ever to control. Okay. Trust everyone. I know that's what you still have regrets, remorse, whatever. Who knows if they left guys on the back of the car or something. You never know. You second guess. You can hindsight yourself to death. You know what I mean? Well, I know that's what you still have regrets, remorse, whatever. Who knows if they left guys on the back of the car or something. You never know. You second guess. You can hindsight yourself to death.
Steel, and the other was transparent plastic. And these different roofs were put together in separate sections, so you could put them on the car if you needed to protect the president from inclement weather.
The Secret Service driver and then a Secret Service agent in the passenger seat, in the front seat. The car itself had handholds on the trunk for the agents like myself to grab onto, to hold onto if we were on the rear of the car, and platforms built into the side of the car and the rear of the car, so that we could stand there in parade situations if necessary. There's always been some allegations about why the agents weren't up on the rear of the car in Dallas. Well, that was simply because the president didn't want them there. And so when we got to Texas, when it was not really necessary, we stayed off the back of the car.
As you can see, I am thanked at the end of this program.
In a bid to gain more public support in Texas, JFK agrees to a 45-minute motorcade through the streets of Dallas before his planned business lunch. 8 days before the visit, a Secret Service agent checks out the planned route of the motorcade. When he signs it off, the president's fate is sealed. Because the route takes JFK through Dealey Plaza and right past several tall buildings, including the Texas School Book Depository from where the fatal shot will be fired.
The threat from any one of those buildings would be great. It was putting the president in a very precarious situation.
When you think of protection, it's not just what's at the ground level. You have to think 360 degrees. You don't want to think like a Secret Service agent. You want to think like the assassin.
And there's another crucial flaw that's been missed. Approaching Dealey Plaza, the motorcade will need to slow down significantly to make the turn onto Elm Street.
It's not just a left-hand turn, it's a sharp left-hand turn and coming back at an angle, okay? The vehicle has to virtually stop or go at a very, very low speed to make that hard turn.
From a window high up in the book depository, the limo becomes the perfect target for a trained sniper.
You don't want to be static or still, and there's a term that's commonly referred to in the surface called get off the X. When you're on the X or when you are static, you are most likely to get hit.
The Secret Service then makes another key error. The details of the planned route are passed on to every law enforcement group involved in the president's visit, except the FBI.
The Secret Service would fail dramatically in the coming days. But who else knew of the plot to kill the president?
The president's head was practically blown off.
Now, we tell the story of that terrible event, minute by minute, from the unique perspective of three of those at the center of it all. Roy Kellerman, the Secret Service agent in charge.
This is a massive failing by the intelligence services.
In San Antonio, greeting the huge crowds mean Jackie and her husband are already behind schedule. As they begin their journey to Brooks Air Force Base, they travel in open-top cars so they can be seen by as many people as possible. Keeping a close watch over them is their 9-man Secret Service detail.
The Secret Service main objective is definitely to protect the president. They're not there to investigate, they're not there to necessarily go after an assassin or assassins or to foil a plot. Their whole raison d'etre is to cover and evacuate the president.
Head of security for the trip is veteran agent Roy Kellerman. This is his first time in charge.
He came from Detroit, Michigan, and he rose quickly through the ranks. He had a funny nickname, they called him Gabby. The reason why I called him Gabby was the exact opposite. He was very soft-spoken and didn't speak much.
Kellerman and his team will need to be at the top of their game. Texas is a hotbed of right-wing racism. Jackie Kennedy and her husband are beginning their 3-day tour of Texas. Well known for being a hotspot of right-wing racism, it's considered a very dangerous place for the Kennedys to visit. In June, Kennedy had delivered a speech supporting the civil rights movement.
The fires of frustration and discord are burning in every city.
His words divide America.
North and South.
By giving his famous June '63 speech, he really fanned the flames in the right wing, the kind of people that President Kennedy himself said, well, we're heading to nut country now.
At 2:40 p.m., Jackie and the president arrive at Brooks Air Force Base for a major speech.
We do stand on the edge of a great new era.
Jackie watches her husband wow the 9,000-strong crowd.
In every phase of human endeavor, it is a time for pathfinders and pioneers.
It's the first time Jackie has been seen in public for 4 months. In August, while heavily pregnant, she had been rushed to hospital.
Mrs. Jacqueline Kennedy bears a premature son who has been baptized Patrick Bouvier.
Born 5 weeks premature, baby Patrick lived for just 39 hours. Jackie's presence means bigger crowds, something that delights her husband, but worries Secret Service agent Roy Kellerman.
Kennedy walked among the crowd, shaking hands, generally creating a nightmare for the Secret Service men who found themselves concerned about their inability to protect him.
Kellerman and his agents are doing their best to create an envelope of security around Jackie and the president. Working as a team, they know exactly what to look for.
You're looking for something out of place. You're looking for an angry face, somebody with their hands in their pockets. They'll tell them in a nice way, please remove your hands from your pockets. This is the stressful part of their job. This is what they signed up for. They knew that when they made the White House detail, they were the elite of the elite.
Kellerman and his team are about to be tested like never before. It's the end of a long first day for Secret Service agent Roy Kellerman. With his charges secure in Suite 850 of the Hotel Texas, he clocks off. But as Kellerman heads to bed, many of his agents head to the bar.
9 agents drank the night before the assassination. That's grounds for removal from the agency.
November 22nd, 1963. Secret Service agent Roy Kellerman is anxious to know if they will need a bubble top for the Dallas motorcade. Although not bulletproof, the clear plexiglass creates a physical barrier between the president and the people. Today, the debate still rages about Kennedy's attitude towards the bubble top.
If they only would have left the front and rear pieces on and even had that open piece in the middle, that would have been a security function. It's a psychological deterrent because so many people wrongly assumed it was bulletproof when an assassin or assassins even try with it on.
It's taken just 13 minutes in Air Force One to fly from Fort Worth to Dallas.
Friday morning, the president's jet lands at the Dallas airport. Love Field.
Once again, it's Jackie who walks off the plane first to an enthusiastic reception.
The usual welcoming committee presents Mrs. Kennedy with a bouquet of red roses.
If you listen to the narration that morning on WFAA ABC, they say, wow, the president, this is amazing. Instead of getting into the presidential limousine, he's heading towards the crowd.
Secret Service boss Roy Kellerman may be getting used to this scene, but he's not letting his guard down.
You can see Roy Kellerman, everybody, he's looking to see that the various local police and local agents are in place. He's looking to see that rope line is there. He's looking to see everything appears to be normal.
Six. $11:50 a.m. at Love Field Airport, Dallas. Jackie sits next to her husband in the back of the open-top limousine. Up front, Secret Service boss Roy Kellerman gives the code word for the presidential couple, Lancer and Lace departing.
Friday, 10 minutes before noon. The motorcade begins the 11-mile ride to the Dallas Trade Mart, where the president is to deliver a major address.
The motorcade stretches for half a mile.
You had the presidential limousine. You had the Secret Service fob car. You had the mayor's car. Then you had the vice president car, and you had the Secret Service fob car for him, other various dignitary cars, local congressmen and senators, you had the press and so on.
Humiliated by the October attack on UN Ambassador Adlai Stevenson, the City of Dallas police have deployed over 700 men, but unusually, none are guarding Dallas's many high-rise rooftops.
The major trip before in Florida, in Tampa, 28 miles, almost 3 times the length of Dallas. They had multi-story building rooftops guarded with all the sheriff's department, with heavy arms. In fact, I spoke to the lead motorcycle officer in Tampa. He told me, oh, every multi-story building at 28 miles had armed men, and they would have shot anybody untoward during that motorcade.
Got a pretty good crowd of people down here on Turtle Creek. It's down to 2 lanes of traffic.
He spotted a sign asking the president to stop and shake hands. In a moment, the president's car is surrounded by screaming children.
You can see from the photos, they got all around the limousine there as it stood still. The agents, to their credit, would have formed around the car and been looking at those hands as if they were at the airport again and looking for any untoward motions, taking people to get their hands out of their pockets.
Simmons Freeway on both sides is pretty well crowded from Continental. Have to go at a real slow speed now.
Nearly 5,000 miles away, in the offices of a small local newspaper in Cambridge, England, an anonymous caller tells a reporter to call the US Embassy for some big news. "12:21 p.m.
12:23.
Halfway down Main Street, FBI Special Agent James Hosty watches the motorcade pass by. He's shocked at how exposed the President and First Lady are. all the Secret Service agents are in the car behind.
When you realize the building rooftops weren't guarded, there's people hanging all out of windows, you realize they weren't on the back of the car in a concentrated fashion. And there wasn't more motorcycles bracketing the car, and even the use of the bubble top. It makes you realize how much Kennedy was a sitting duck.
10-4-1 is a pretty good crowd there. Big crowd, yes.
As the motorcade progresses through downtown Dallas, Jackie is feeling the heat. Exposed in the open-top car, she's not as comfortable as her husband with frenzied crowds.
The motorcade turns off Main Street and enters Dealey Plaza, and they make a short right-hand turn onto Houston Street.
In the presidential car, Jackie hears Governor Connolly's wife say to the president, "You certainly can't say that the people of Dallas haven't given you a nice welcome."
And the president says, "No, you sure can't." Then they make the really tight jog onto Elm Street. Now, this was all a violation of Secret Service protocol and common sense. You're never supposed to take the president in a situation where you're slowing the car down like that.
The president's car is now turning onto Elm Street, and it will be only a matter of minutes before he arrives at the trademark. I was on Simmons Freeway earlier, and even the freeway was jam-packed with spectators waiting their chance to see the president.
The first shot rings out. The vast majority of Dealey Plaza witnesses thought it was a firecracker or even a motorcycle backfire.
The moment of the first shot is one of chaos and confusion.
Secret Service agent Kellerman jolts his head to the right, where he thinks the shot has come from.
Stand by, please. Something has happened in the motorcade route. Several police officers are rushing up the hill. Something, I repeat, has happened in the motorcade route.
Secret Service agent Kellerman screams into his radio.
Lawson, this is Kellerman, we've been hit. Win Lawson was the agent in the lead car in front of them. We've been hit. Get us to the hospital immediately.
Stand by. 10-4 Parkland has been notified, 1232.
Jackie Kennedy tries to get out of the limousine, her pink suit covered in her husband's blood.
It is difficult to watch the First Lady's response of her trying to clamber over the back of the limousine.
She's in shock, she's disorientated.
There's a Secret Service man, spread eagle, over the top of the car.
As an eyewitness, even many decades later, it's still a moment that's actually really difficult to take in.
As her husband's lifeless body slumps into her lap, Jackie screams, "My God, they have shot his head off." She will tell the investigation later, "I could see a piece of his skull, and I remember it was flesh-colored. I remember thinking he just looked as if he had a slight headache. Then I just remember falling on him and saying, 'Oh no, no, no.'"
This is a massive failing by the intelligence services. They have been seen to fail by the entire world.
The blood, the screams, the fear, the murder of a US president.
President Kennedy has been killed in broad daylight in front of hundreds of witnesses. Yet today, exactly what happened is still furiously debated.
There are many conspiracy theorists who are convinced that there were multiple shooters in Dealey Plaza. And perhaps most famously, the conspiracy theorist Oliver Stone put out a film that suggested there were many, many shooters.
Key to it all is exactly how many shots were fired at the president. Secret Serviceman Roy Kellerman believes he hears a flurry of shells coming into the car. Later, the official version will say 3. The magic bullet theory is the most controversial element of the official investigation. It relies on Oswald's second shot, inflicting multiple wounds on both Kennedy and Governor Connolly. Dr. Cyril Wecht is a longtime critic.
No matter who the shooter might be, if you don't have a single bullet theory, you cannot have a sole assassin. It is that basic, it is that absolutely unequivocal.
We can dispute whether this was an act of one individual or an elaborate conspiracy.
I repeat, Parkland Hospital has been advised to stand by for a severe gunshot wound.
5 minutes after the shooting, Jackie cradles her dying husband.
Attention all emergency equipment, attention all emergency equipment, keep all traffic off of the emergency entrance to Parkland Hospital.
As the presidential limousine races at 80 miles per hour, she whispers, "He's dead. They've killed him." As the motorcade screeches to a halt, Agent Kellerman helps lift the president out of the car.
He said JFK's eyes were opened and it looked like all signs of life were gone, although technically he did have a heartbeat and technically he lived for another 20 to 30 minutes. But for all intents and purposes, he was DOA.
Do you know the extent of the injury? The president's head was practically blown off.
7 minutes ago, Jackie and her husband were smiling and waving at the crowd. Now she follows his lifeless body into the operating room.
President's wife, Jackie Kennedy, was not hurt. She walked into the hospital, had her husband stretcher side.
(1 p.m., November the 22nd, 1963. The city of Dallas is in shock. President Kennedy has just been shot. Just 30 minutes ago, Jackie and her husband had been smiling and waving at the crowd. Now she waits outside the emergency room at Parkland Hospital. But JFK, the 35th President of the United States, is gone. A doctor tells her, "We will not pronounce him dead until he has had the last rites." Kissing his body, Jackie begins to cry.
Just a moment, we have a bulletin coming in. We now switch you directly to Parkland Hospital and KBOX News Director Bill Hampton.
As Oswald surrenders, he says, "Well, it's over now."
The interesting thing about Oswald is he's always assumed to be guilty, and yet he was never tried, never brought before court, and never sentenced.
Within hours, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover will tell the world they have caught Kennedy's killer.
There's no way in the world that he could have determined that. He could have believed it, but until you check every possible contact that Oswald had, 2.5 years in Russia, and then the contacts he had in America, how can you possibly know that? But he's already announcing to the world, they're locked in.
Now a newly released memo reveals an astonishing fact. Hoover was determined to prove Oswald's guilt, no matter what. The thing I am concerned about is having something issued so we can convince the public that Oswald is the real assassin.
J. Edgar Hoover had something really important to hide, which was that the FBI knew a lot about Lee Harvey Oswald before the assassination, should have known that he was a real threat to President Kennedy, but failed to notify anybody about this, specifically not to notify the Secret Service that President Kennedy was going to Dallas, where Oswald lived.
One conspiracy theory states Hoover was part of a much larger cover-up, which believes Kennedy was killed by members of his own military and intelligence services, who feared the president was soft on communism and was going to warm up the Cold War with Russia.
This wasn't going to be good for America. To tell Americans that the government had been overthrown by the killing of the president, that it was coup d'etat in America.
Just after 2 p.m., Jackie climbs into a hearse with the body of her husband. Roy Kellerman and the Secret Service have ignored the Texas officials. They are all leaving for Washington. Helen O'Donnell's father helps carry the coffin.
My father said that they didn't want the president's body to be removed because they figured they're going to get the blame, so they want to make sure it's all done right. But my father was like, the hell with this.
Soon, the president's autopsy will reveal some extraordinary results. Friday, November the 22nd, 1963. Just over 2 hours ago, Jackie Kennedy and her husband were welcomed at Love Field by cheering, smiling crowds.
Mrs. Kennedy joins him in the throng of outstretched hands and cameras.
Now, the crowds are gone.
How can it be that you see someone so vibrant just over an hour ago, and now their life has ended? How did this happen, and who is to blame?
Jackie watches as Secret Serviceman Roy Kellerman and his agents struggle to load her husband's body onto Air Force One. The coffin is too wide for the aircraft door. Kellerman and his team pull off the side handles.
The juxtaposition between those earlier images and then these darkly comic images of the Secret Service trying to load his casket. It really is a kind of a visceral power.
Finally, Jackie follows her husband back onto Air Force One.
They were all devastated, and none of them recovered, including my father. They felt responsible, and all that majesty was just destroyed in one shot, and that's sad.
As Jackie goes into deep shock, Helen O'Donnell's father becomes increasingly concerned.
He said he really thought at one point Jackie was going to have a heart attack. And he said, I just thought, I've got to get her out of here. He said, this is my last job for Jack Kennedy, who's my president but my friend. And my job is to get his body home to Washington and to get his wife home to Bobby.
While Jackie rests in the presidential suite, Roy Kellerman finds the atmosphere on Air Force One tense as the vice president's security team take charge. As Air Force One touches down at Andrews Air Force Base, Washington, millions tune in live to see Jackie Kennedy follow her husband's coffin into a hearse. She is still wearing her blood-stained pink suit.
The widow, on the arm of her brother-in-law, remains a towering figure of fortitude through her long ordeal.
Jackie accompanies her husband's body as it's taken to a military hospital. 7:30 p.m. President Kennedy's autopsy begins. Jackie has requested it is done at Bethesda Naval Hospital, as Jack had been a naval man. But today, others question the real reason for taking his body to a military hospital.
It was basically a national security move to a military hospital where more agreeable people could look over the body and could be twisted under military orders.
They wanted to have the autopsy done under military control. There were 33 people in the autopsy room that night, including 4-star admirals and generals. These guys were told what to do. There's no question about it.
Secret Serviceman Roy Kellerman is also in the autopsy room. He helps the pathologists identify the president's wounds.
When the doctors were working on the body, he made a crucial observation. He noticed the back of the president's head was gone, which is critical if you believe there's a conspiracy, because again, entrance wounds are small, exit wounds are large.
The autopsy reveals Kennedy was struck by 2 shots from the rear. Vital information that will lead investigators to conclude Oswald was the lone gunman. But for many, this evidence didn't add up. The Dallas doctors had said they saw a large exit wound in the back of the president's head, indicating a shot from the front, and therefore more than one shooter.
The autopsy is essential in providing an authoritative account of the causes of the president's death, but it did not do that. there's a lack of agreement about whether they are looking at a shot that has entered the president's body from the front or the back. And that immediately raises the issue about whether or not there are one or two gunmen.
For decades, veteran pathologist Dr. Cyril Wecht has believed the autopsy findings are wrong. He's convinced the president was shot from both the rear and the front.
It's infuriating every time I talk about it, and today I'm talking about it maybe for the 10,000th time. It just infuriates me. The passion just automatically flows. I don't have to press any buttons or pretend that I'm angry.
Suspicion has also been cast on some of those closest to the president, in particular Secret Serviceman Roy Kellerman and his team of agents.
They definitely felt like they failed in their mission. They had one job to do, the number one most important job. The life of the president was taken.
Although he never spoke about the assassination, Kellerman hinted he thought there was more to the story than just Lee Harvey Oswald.
I spoke to his widow, her name was June, and she said that Roy accepted that there was a conspiracy. In fact, when he spoke to the House Select Committee, he says, I'll accept that. It's like, wait, so Roy accepted there was a conspiracy? Yes, he believed there was a conspiracy, but she never got any details from him, nothing.
In recent years, millions of pages of new information have been released. Today, there is overwhelming evidence that the US intelligence services knew more than they said about Lee Harvey Oswald.
I always thought the valor of the Secret Service, how they would literally, throw themselves in front of potential assassins' bullets, and always fascinated me. And the question to me was always, wait a minute, why didn't these agents do more to protect the man? And the more I looked into it, the more I realized there were a lot of anomalies, a lot of questions that needed to be answered on the subject.
No one has spent more time studying the Secret Service's actions that day than Vince Palomera.
Standard operating procedure in an open motorcade would have been for the agents to be running, walking, or jogging with the presidential limousine. And there was also two handrails in the back for an agent or agents to hold on to, so they would be in close proximity to the president. Agents not riding on the rear of the limo is a huge issue in this case. The Secret Service agents are powerless to really do much of anything if they're not close to the president. And official mythology, I like to call it, is that President Kennedy allegedly ordered the agents off the car 4 days before Dallas.
Claiming President Kennedy asked for changes to the motorcade's normal security protocols had been a recurring theme during the Warren Commission.
I spoke to the special agent in charge of the White House detail, the #1 agent, Gerald Bain. I asked him, President Kennedy, I understand he was difficult to protect, right? He didn't want the agents on the back of the car, and he told me, this is the exact quote, I don't remember Kennedy ever saying anything about not having agents on the back of the car. If you look at the newsreels, you'll see agents on there. Well, one by one, I spoke to many of his colleagues, not only in the Secret Service, but actually White House aides that were not Secret Service agents, and it was a landslide. They were all telling me the same thing.
Supposedly Kennedy ordered the agents on the back of the limousine. No. He had nothing to do with that. The record of history, that is false.
President Kennedy, very nice man, not difficult to protect, did not order the agents off the back of the car.
This complete departure from procedure is captured here as the motorcade begins to leave Love Field Airport in Dallas.
Jogging beside the car was an agent. In the fob car behind him, another agent rises from his seat and does hand gestures like this, obviously to order him to cease and desist. The agent stops in his tracks 3 times, not once, not twice, but 3 times, goes like this. And actually, that's the universal body language for what is going on. Turns out the agent's name was Don Lawton, and he's the agent who's formerly told to cease and desist by shift leader Emory Roberts, who rises in his seat with the hand gestures. And you see Don Lawton going like this. Don Lawton rode on the back of the car on the Chicago trip earlier in 1963 and 4 days before in Tampa. But he's relegated to meaningless Love Field luggage duty during the motorcade, during the assassination. It's ridiculous.
Secret Service agent Clint Hill is also recalled from his position on the opposite side of the limousine. Emory Roberts had been the only one of 3 Secret Service shift leaders from the White House that was part of the motorcade.
Emory Roberts was in charge of the follow-up car that was immediately behind JFK, full of Secret Service agents. He was the general, so to speak, of the follow-up car. If he said something, that's how it went.
Emory Roberts, however, received his orders from Floyd Boring, the number 2 man of the Secret Service White House detail, based in Washington.
Floyd Boring, he was in charge of planning the Texas trip, and he was the one who gave out assignments.
In an interview with the Assassination Records Review Board in 1996, he stated that there had been no change in policy for the Dallas trip, and put the blame on President Kennedy. The number 1 man and head of the White House detail, Gerald Bain, was on vacation starting the week before the Texas trip, which left the immediate handling of the trip to Boring. Floyd Boring's right-hand man in charge of the logistics on the ground in Texas was Special Agent Winston Lawson.
Winston Lawson came from the Buffalo, Syracuse, New York area. He was a former counterintelligence agent in the Army, and he joined the Secret Service in 1959. And again, he was an advance agent, an agent that would actually go to the different cities, towns in America and overseas in advance to work with the local police and dignitaries, whatnot, to get everything in line with motorcade rides, building security, etc., etc.
Lawson, assisted by Agent Roger Warner, set the order of the vehicles in the Dallas motorcade.
The normal order would have been to have a pilot car and a lead car, which was done in Dallas. Then you had a flatbed truck of the press photographers in front of the limousine filming and being eyewitnesses, and that in and of itself is a deterrent. And you had the press buses close behind the limousine, again, professional newsmen, eyewitnesses, they would have been there filming.
Conveniently, the press was moved back at the last minute. There wouldn't have been a need for Abraham Zapruder, an amateur, to film the assassination.
Another break from routine in the Dallas motorcade: the positioning of police motorcycles around the president's limousine.
As with any other motorcade, the Secret Service worked hand in hand with local authorities to ensure the safety of the president. Usually surrounding the car, there would be a group of motorcycles. This was not only to obscure or block the view of potential assassins, but also to prevent anyone from the public who might be viewing, who got too excited, from approaching the car.
And up to and including the day before the assassination, this held true. In his prior Texas stops in San Antonio, Houston, and Fort Worth, normally there were 6 to 9 motorcycle officers around the presidential limousine in a wedge formation, including flanking the car, which means in translation, they were riding right beside JFK. Then all of a sudden there is a last-minute change, and the motorcycles are reduced to 4 beside the car, but then they're not even beside the car, they're not flanking anymore, they're moved behind. Translation, the formation was meaningless. It offered no protection at all. In fact, when the shooting began, you don't even see the motorcycle officers around the car.
Agent Lawson told the Warren Commission why he had ordered the motorcycles to fall back from the limousine.
Well, it's my understanding he couldn't hear conversation well. And that's why he didn't want the motorcycles beside him. And yet they had no problem that morning in Fort Worth, the day before in San Antonio and Houston, and 4 days before, the week before, the month before, the year before, the years before. They left Kennedy a sitting duck.
Another line of protection for the president that wasn't used was the limousine's bubble top.
The bubble top was a plexiglass covering that was put on the car, the presidential limousine. The conventional wisdom that it was bulletproof or bullet resistant. Turns out it was not bulletproof or bullet resistant in the standard way we think of that. However, it was a psychological deterrent because most people assumed it was bulletproof.
Popular belief has it that the limousine's bubble top was not used for 2 reasons. 1, because what started as an overcast and dreary day turned sunny and clear.
The actual films and photos of several motorcades, shows the bubble top on in the brightest weather conditions imaginable. So there's a myth that it was only on there for inclement weather. Not true. And the bottom line, what the bubble top would have done is it would have obscured an assassin's view via the sun's glare.
The second reason most often given as to why the bubble top had not been used is that the president had requested not to use it.
But I spoke to the agent who was the driver of the follow-up car, Sam Kinney. Sam Kinney adamantly on 3 different occasions told me that President Kennedy had nothing to do with it. It was solely his responsibility.
Supposedly, JFK said, I'm quoting now, get that goddamn bubble top off. Listen, that is not true.
The bubble top came in 6 pieces, but sometimes it was on there for just the front and rear pieces were on, so it would be an open car and some semblance of protection as well. A partial bubble top with the front and rear pieces on, and he would be able to get air and be able to stand up, and he didn't have that configuration. It's a question of why. Why wasn't at least that configuration used in Dallas?
Another troubling inconsistency with Secret Service protocols was the monitoring of buildings.
Buildings were not properly monitored in Dallas. Windows were not even properly monitored by the Secret Service. Wynn Lawson said it was usual instructions to give out these orders to scan the windows along the parade route, but he didn't remember giving out the order or not. And it turns out that Dallas police, who were also involved in security of the motorcade route, said that no orders were given. The bottom line protocol were agents or local police or both were supposed to monitor buildings. Dealey Plaza was not properly cleared, was not properly monitored, and the overpasses, any potential overpasses that would have been clear to spectators and manned by local police.
Even more alarming is what happened inside the Secret Service car directly behind the president's limousine once shots rang out. Shift leader Emory Roberts would give an order to the other agents in the car.
When the assassination begins, he orders the men not to move. Sam Kinney, the driver of the FOB car, who's right beside him, confirmed to me that this happened. He ordered the men not to move at the beginning of the assassination.
Emory Roberts supposedly ordered the men not to move. That's exactly right.
These men were sworn to protect the president, to dive in front of a bullet if need be, to sacrifice their body. And you mean to tell me this man is going to order them to cease and desist when the shooting begins?
And just what were the Secret Service agents who were actually inside the president's limousine doing at the time of the shooting?
Agents Bill Greer and Roy Kellerman were pivotal to the success of the assassination, and they were pivotal to the success of the assassination through inaction. Bill Greer was the driver of the president's limousine in Dallas. Roy Kellerman was riding right beside him. Greer hits the gas pedal, Kennedy lives. First shot rings out. Bill Greer looks back at the president. His foot's on the brake too because the car slows down. It's only going 11.2 miles an hour. It's crawling at this point. And then Roy Kellerman says, get out of line, we've been hit. That's when Bill Greer turns around a second time and is staring at Kennedy and doesn't do anything until Kennedy is killed. Yes, it was only 6 to 8 seconds, depending on estimates, but that is a lifetime for a Secret Service agent. Count down 6 to 8 seconds and watch the video of Reagan being shot. These men, by the time the 8-second shot, they're well out of there. Let alone 2, 3, 5 seconds. Amazing what they did. And Roy Kellerman, for his part, doesn't jump. He doesn't jump back. He's turned around. He's staring at Kennedy too.
The shooting had stopped by the time Clint Hill, who was assigned to protect the First Lady, finally leapt onto the limousine. Could these monumental lapses by the Secret Service just have been a series of unfortunate oversights?
How convenient that this all happened on the day allegedly a lone assassin struck the president down. 1963 protocol, President Kennedy should have lived in Dallas. He should have lived past the Dallas motorcade. But Floyd Boring in charge of protection of the president by planning the Texas trip, Emory Roberts in charge of the FOB car, and Bill Greer, the driver of the president's car. Those 3 men bear the largest burden of what went down in Dallas. The buck stops with the Secret Service. Yeah.
Roy Kellerman spoke with FBI agents at the president's autopsy. He was quoted with a surprising statement.
Agent Kellerman said that the security for this trip was the most stringent and thorough ever employed by the Secret Service for any trip the president ever made. Now, if you believe that, I've got some land I want to sell you.
In 1995, the government's Assassination Records Review Board, wanting to compare security in Texas against other recent trips, requested to see all Secret Service documents pertaining to presidential visits around that time. Rather than comply, the Secret Service destroyed many of its records from the fall of 1963, making any true comparisons impossible.
I heard 3 loud.
From his hometown of Duluth in Minnesota, one of those questioning critics of the official version of events is Professor James Fetzer.
The resurgence of interest in the death of JFK had repercussions when Congress passed the JFK Records Act in 1992 that created a 5-civilian-member board entrusted with the responsibility to review and declassify documents that were held by the CIA, the Secret Service, the Office of Naval Intelligence, and so forth. We know from its own report that it had some significant failures. For example, and the Secret Service, which deliberately destroyed motorcade records that would have revealed that the motorcade in Dallas was a travesty, a violation of at least 15 different Secret Service policies for presidential protection. This behavior on their part raises the most serious and disturbing questions about their complicity in the entire affair.
From the moment he arrived in Dallas, the president's protection was suspect, according to Vince Palomara, a Secret Service expert.
There was last-minute changes invoked by the Secret Service involving President Kennedy's security. Specifically, agents were told not to ride on or near the rear of the limousine. Now, these orders were funneled from the Assistant Special Agent in charge of the White House detail, who was the planner of the Texas trip, Floyd Boring, to one of his assistants, a shift leader by the name of Emory Roberts, who was in charge of the follow-up car. You can see an agent, Henry Ribka, doing his normal duty, jogging beside the limousine, when in the follow-up car, you can see Emory Roberts stand up and wave him back, and you can see a very perplexed Agent Ribka waving his arms in the air several times in seeming disgust. There was another last-minute change made at Love Field, invoked by the Secret Service. The Dallas Police Department motorcycle outriders were told not to be beside the car. It went from 4 to 6 down to a measly 2 riders on each side, and to add insult to injury, they were pushed further back in the motorcade by those agents not being by the car, by those motorcycle officers not being in the position. It opened up President Kennedy to a field of fire from in front and from the rear.
In the months before the trip to Texas, there had been a growing number of threats against the president's life.
Despite the increase in conspiratorial activity in the month of November 1963, in the apparent red alert the Secret Service appears to be under in response to this activity, the agency acts in the opposite fashion and actually reduces the security and acts like no threats on the president's life are occurring. Why?
Uniquely on that day in Dallas, the press, the camera crews, Kennedy's military aide, who would normally sit in the front of the president's car, and even his personal physician were all relegated to the rear of the motorcade by the Secret Service.
In a conventional motorcade, the president would be somewhere in the middle, surrounded by security and the press. In this case, the presidential limousine was set right out in front of every other limousine, which of course is the reason why the Secret Service destroyed the records of its own motorcades when they were asked for them by the Assassination Records Review Board.
The most suspicious behavior by shift leader Emory Roberts was to be at the time of the shooting in Dealey Plaza.
Tragically, he actually ordered the agents not to move during the heart of the shooting. Agent Sam Kinney, who drove the follow-up car, admitted as much to me and told me, quote, exactly right, end quote. And all these deficiencies begin and end with the Secret Service, because they were the prime movers. They were the ones who were directing the security arrangements from Washington up to and including in the heart of Dallas during security meetings. They were the ones that gave out assignments, vetoed or approved of security arrangements, so the buck stops with them.